Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, Sheikh Hamzam. I have one question. So you mentioned something about the on meaning, right? For us to be people of meaning. Now, how do we determine what's the right meaning for us, so that we don't get deluded by the false meaning? Since meaning can be either individualistic, what's the haq then? Shukran.
Great question. So I think it also offers the importance of understanding the difference between like a sentimentality, just having a sentimental attachment or affiliation. Like someone can watch like a movie and be in tears, and it's so meaningful to me. But in terms of, it may have touched a real place, but a lot of these mediums really work at the level of emotion. And it's actually an abuse of meaning, an abuse of the soul, because we were able and created, designed to experience these things and to be touched, to be affected. I mean, one of the reasons why the Prophet ﷺ loved the Yemeni people is because they would weep easily. And he saw that as something very profound in a human being. You know, and it wasn't done, it wasn't a sign of weakness, particularly in a man. I know with my own father, after he became Muslim, and I would never say that he was heartless or cold in his interaction, but English people, we don't, as a culture, we don't cry, we don't weep, especially in front of other men, unless you're unfortunately intoxicated in some kind of way. But as general cultural practice, it's not something that we do. And one of the most profound moments that I've ever experienced was being in front of one of my teachers, who was, I don't know how else to describe him other than an inheritor of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. His smile, his peace, his beauty, his gentleness, his kindness was just awesome in the true sense of the word, and it was overwhelming. My father sat with him, and he was just so magnanimous. He was so real to him. We're in a time we need people to be real with one another and have that safe space to be real with one another and not judge. And it was just so real. And then at the end of the gathering, and it was so prophetic, he just reached out and just placed his shawl on my father's shoulder. My father just started to weep. And I remember just observing this thing, that came from a very real place. That wasn't sentimental. That wasn't just something and it was very moving. And so in terms of judging meaning and understanding what meaning is, the great blessing that we have as Muslims is that we have access to the Quran as it was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's a very profound claim. If you actually take a step back and just think about that, even from an academic perspective, it's very profound. There's not been a single alteration, not even in terms of some of the tonal injunctions, whether it's an extending of the it's going to be waladdallin until Yawm al-Qiyamah. It has to be that six mudu. You can't reduce it, and it's incredible. Even in terms of the elongation and the shorting is divinely protected. So what about the meaning? Divinely protected. That's why the source, when we talk about the source of the deen, it's always to look within the Quran. And the meanings of the Quran, or the scholars say revelation has been sealed, with the passing of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But it's the dissension and inspiration from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala of its infinite meanings will continue. And that's why people still read the Quran and different meanings come. Different meanings come. So the source is always the Quran. And then you have the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that which he did, that which he spoke about. So if you say, I want to be a person of meaning, inherently that means to be a person who has a connection to the Quran and the way of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in its holistic nature. And then how do we understand that? It's through the prism of his authorized inheritors. And what I mean by authorization here is sanad. There's much claim to knowledge now, but if you were to go to a doctor, typically you'd have some kind of awareness of his credentials. You're not going to go to anybody claiming the ability to have sound medical practice, that's just walking around the streets dealing out pamphlets. So why are we doing that with our deen? If we're going to submit the physical heart to the operating theatre with somebody with credentials, then the spiritual heart, which has infinite, it has implications which are infinite, is, first and foremost, we should be looking to this. So to look and scout out those people, because they're the ones that can unlock the Quran for us and unlock the Sunnah of the Prophet for us in our lives, which is different to us. The example of this, look at the Sahaba, the people that were trained in the madrasa of meaning. But if you look at Umar, and then you look at Abu Bakr, radiallahu anhum, how different were the two? Abu Bakr was described as being very, very gentle, very shy, very quiet. Not weak, but meek in a brittle spiritual sense. Very, very gentle. Incredibly principled, but also incredibly gentle. Sayyidina Umar, radiallahu anhu, as we know, was very jalali, very awe-inspiring. He was very tall. He was one of the warriors amongst the Arabs, literally the early giants, Khattatun, this kind of archetype of people that lived in Mecca, which, everybody could see Umar when he was going around the Kaaba, because his head stood so far above everyone else's. But look what the Prophet ﷺ transformed them into. And an interesting side note here is he didn't make them the same. It wasn't like a cookie cutter kind of okay, you've all got to be exact same now. They still had that expression of personality. Abu Bakr was still very much Abu Bakr. And Sayyidina Umar was still much Sayyidina Umar. But it's with the principles of prophecy. They were made into people of meaning. It wasn't just Umar, the person that used to beat, people if they angered him, put them out of temper. It was Umar that, I mean, look at this. One time he was in the Masjid Nabawi, the Prophet's mosque, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and there were two kids. I don't know if you use this word in Malaysia, but we say involved in a bit of horseplay, just faffing about in the masjid. You always get it. Second, there's always just kids being kids, and that's okay. That's permissible within our religion. To allow children to be children and to celebrate that. So with these two children, it wasn't at the prayer time. There was nothing else going on. But these two children, and Umar came in as Umar. It's like, what is, and the kid, imagine the kids' faces. Look at this. So behind a sariya, which is like one of these columns, at the time of the Prophet, it would have been a palm trunk. So from behind a sariya, Umar heard a voice, very quiet voice. Ya Umar. That's all it was, very quiet. Ya Umar. They say at the sound of that voice, Umar almost shriveled. Labbaik ya Rasulullah. At your service, ya Rasulullah. The transformation, he just, and the Prophet, he, not only Umar, look at that, that reminder, but he understood the implications. He didn't say, what are you doing? Why have you been reading to the kid? It was just, Umar. And what happened to Umar at the time is, I need to follow your way, ya Rasulullah. I need to be more like you. This is what you've been teaching me all these years. And then, but he was still so gracious in the way that he taught, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then you have the likes of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, radiallahu anhu, who literally, if anyone knows anything about his seerah, he died of a broken heart. When people, when they grow old together, they've been married maybe early 20s or this kind, and they've spent an entire lifetime together. One of the amazing phenomena that just takes place in the world, because Allah's beauty is everywhere. It's not just within the ummah, if you understand. You can see expressions of beauty in everyone and everything. No person is solely evil, and we have to really understand this. And none of us are wholly perfect. Far from it in many instances. In any event, if you look at an older person, maybe he's in his 70s, maybe even his 80s, and his wife passes away. Typically, he won't last much longer. If you look at this, very common. I don't know the statistics, but you see this. Why? Because she was his life. Like, he's heartbroken. His paradigm was waking up in the morning and they'd do those things, and like that would be the way she'd lay down the plate, and then they'd look out the window and they'd had this experience and the difficulties and the pains and all of this. So life without her is not the same anymore. And, that's, so what would it have been with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? When, Aisha, his daughter, radiallahu anha, when the Prophet chose the Prophet, we're in the months of Hijrah now, so we have to mention something about Hijrah. When the Prophet declared that he'd be taking Abu Bakr with him on Hijrah, he started to cry out of happiness. Abu Bakr was very soft-hearted. He started to weep out of joy because he knew what that would mean. He'd be alone with the Prophet for all this time. And Aisha, she said, when I looked at my father, I'd never seen somebody know what it meant to cry out of happiness until I saw him. Like, I'd never seen someone cry out of happiness, except for that day when he cried and he was told that he'd be going with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So she also describes him after the Prophet passed on, is that his nights would be spent, he would be cross-legged, and he'd be in a room, and he would just have his head lowered, and they wouldn't hear just kind of murmuring in dhikr and whispering under his voice, and tears would be strolling from his eyes. Abu Bakr. What was he saying? What was the wird? What was the dhikr of Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu? Wa shawqa ila Rasulillah. And it's very hard to translate that from Arabic to English. Like, an authentic rendering really just means you over-explain it. Wa shawqa. It's like, literally it means, oh, how much I miss the Messenger of Allah. But it's a man who's in pain, who's just yearning, like, besides himself, like, just so, because he was the meaning, he was everything to Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. This is the way of the Prophet, and he's still transforming people today. I mean, that didn't stop. We have to understand this. And this is why, if we follow his way through authentic inheritors of his path, sound scholarship, people with sanad, all the way back to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we start to gain a connection and a relationship with him. One of the things we find, just closing on this question, is one of the definite characteristics of city life and this urban habitat which we find ourselves in, is it's difficult to devote your time to anything. And, the family often misses out, the kids miss out, the wife misses out, the husband misses out. This is just a part of the, you get back home and you're just ready to go to bed, and it's just, this is a form of what in Arabic you call haraj. It's difficulty, the circumstances are not easy, they're not conducive to devotion. But in the Mustadrak of Imam Hakim, the Prophet ﷺ said, Al-ibadatu fil haraji kal-hijrati ilayh. Devotion, being a person of worship, to devote yourself, to be a meaningful person, a person who's striving, even though it's hard, even if you're going against the grain, everything's going against you. A person of these characteristics, in a time of haraj, in a time of difficulty, worship in this time is like hijrah ilayh, it's like a migration, a hijrah to me. The Prophet ﷺ said. So in reality, if people find themselves, just the circumstances of modern life, it's difficult. But you're striving to be a person of meaning. You're striving to connect yourself to people of meaning. You're striving to attend gatherings which remind you of your purpose. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, this is as if you've migrated, as if you flew to me. And anybody that's in his shade sallallahu alaihi wasallam is protected and blessed, and that's a shadow which, well, he didn't have a shadow sallallahu alaihi wasallam, part of his khasa'is. So may Allah connect us to him and unlock the meaning within us, make us people of purpose to connecting to the people of purpose. Wallahu a'lam.